Hello and good evening to all of you. Welcome to one more episode of Guru Gyan. Today we are privileged to have with us Mr. Nilesh Shah. Mr. Shah is a well-known personality in the investment and mutual fund space. He is the group president and MD at Kotak AMC. He has earlier worked in leadership roles in Axis Capital, ICICI Pru AMC, Franklin Templeton, and ICICI Securities. He is a gold medalist CA and a merit rank cost accountant. Welcome, Mr. Shah.
Thank you, Deepak.
Now, we will throw open the session to you. Now, you can start with your introductory views on the current situation in the equity, debt, and gold markets, and then we'll take it forward from there.
Thank you, Deepak. Very good afternoon to everyone. This is one of the most peculiar time in the market where there is a perfect storm brewing, where medical crisis created economic crisis, and economic and medical crisis put together created a financial crisis. We have no experience of dealing these three crises together, and hence everyone is taking a decision based on gut rather than based on experience. The economy suffered a huge negative degrowth, about 24% for June quarter. Businesses in sectors like traveling, tourism, aviation, retailing, multiplexes were hit very, very badly. Some businesses in pharma, FMCG, online retailing, power, telecom weren't hit that badly. But overall economy suffered a lot. Now economy seems to be recovering slowly and steadily. September data on GST collection was 4% higher than previous year. The fuel consumption is almost similar to January 20 fuel consumption. Power consumption is higher than previous year's level. PMI numbers about manufacturing is now almost above 50, which is into expansion mode. More importantly, October, November has festivals like Dasera, Diwali, Durga Puja, and that will make people spend money. I was speaking with some friends in Kolkata, and which they said is that now we are seeing Durga Puja buying happening. Put all these things together, on economy, we witnessed a rough ride, but now things seems to be stabilizing, and slowly and steadily it is going up. In the economy, in the dark clouds of growth, there are some silver linings. One, India will become current account surplus. That means our exports will be more than our import for first time in last 13 years. This is possible due to lower oil prices, lower gold import, and more importantly, lower trade deficit with China. From $23 billion trade deficit in first 5 months, it has come down to $13 billion as people are boycotting Chinese goods. The second silver lining for us is accommodative monetary policy. Interest rates have been cut. Transmission is still an issue, but RBI is working on the same. Liquidity is in abundance. High liquidity, low interest rates could result into better growth as credit starts moving further. The third thing is related to goodwill which India has gathered during this crisis. The world is now suspicious of China. They probably gifted world Wuhan virus as some people claim. On the other hand, India provided hydroxychloroquine tablets. 60% of world's vaccine manufacturing capacity is in India. So we will be supplying vaccines as and when it gets discovered. Net compared to China, India's image in Western world has gone up several notches. Now we must convert this into an encashable opportunity by shifting companies out of China to India. We must lay a red carpet for those companies to come out of China to India and become part of global supply chain management. Our exports are $300–350 billion. China's export is almost $3 trillion. How do we take away some slice from there will determine how our growth story pans out. More importantly, in the market, one needs to figure out what to do in order to make money. Now, there are two ways of making money in market: stock picking and asset allocation. If you pick up right stocks, you will be able to make money over a period of time. And more importantly, if you determine how much to put into equity when you pick up right stock, that will determine how much money you will make. In current situation, we think apart from good business, good management, you need to focus on three things to pick up the winner. One, the company in which you are investing, their balance sheet should be steady. Their balance sheet should have lower debt. In this downturn, if debt is heavy, then your entire profitability will go in servicing debt. Lenders will take away everything. There will be nothing left for shareholders. So invest in companies which have moderate leverage rather than high debt. The second thing is about adaptiveness of company. There is lockdown, there is restricted movement, there is virus looming, and hence companies which are adaptive to digital ecosystem, they will do well. Every company today is saying that we are digitally conscious company, we are adopting digital way of doing business, but there is a difference between talking and actually executing. If you find companies whose adoption of digital ecosystem is far superior to their peers, that company is likely to be a winner. So when you are investing, look at the companies which are adopting to digital new world in this tough environment. The third and final thing about company is cost cutting. Every company is saying we are cutting cost, but some are doing for namesake, some are doing it genuinely in order to cut their cost and bring down their operating leverage. We believe by picking up companies which are less leveraged, by picking up companies which are adaptive to digital ecosystem, and by picking up companies which are cutting cost with surgeon's precision, we will be able to create portfolio of companies which will outperform the market. The second issue is related to allocation. And let me give you an interesting story. I had gone to Flame University in Pune, and Ramesh Damani ji was giving a lecture. In India, there are very few investors like Ramesh Damani who has picked up 100 beggar stocks in its portfolio. And he was narrating that between Ramesh Damani, Radhakishan Damani and Nimesh Bhai, Ramesh Bhai has picked up maximum number of 100 beggar stocks. But when 100 beggar stock came to him, he put in a small money. With Radhakishan ji and Nimesh Bhai, when 100 beggar stock came to them, they put in a large bet. And which is why their wealth grew disproportionately to Ramesh Damani ji's wealth. It is not important to find how many 100 beggars you have in your portfolio. It is important that when you get 100 beggar, you put truckload of money on betting on it. This is called as allocation. Now, we can easily say that buy when things are cheap, sell when things are expensive, but it's extremely difficult to do it in real life. We have been doing this asset allocation, equity allocation in a fund of ours called Kotak Balance Advantage Fund. In Kotak Balance Advantage Fund, we are putting 20 to 80% in equity allocation depending upon valuation of the market. When markets are turning expensive, we put anywhere between 20 to 40% in equity. When markets are becoming cheap, we put 60 to 80% in equity. And when markets are fairly valued, we put between 40 to 60% in equity. On 17th of Jan 2020, when Nifty was 12,382, our allocation came down to 39%, indicating that markets are turning expensive. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, we should have bring it down to 20%, but our models are not perfect. They are good in terms of picking direction. Magnitude continues to elude us. On 27th of March, when Nifty became 7,800, we were 75% in equity as our model suggested. Markets have become cheap. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, we should have put in 80%. But 75% is also good enough. Today, at about 12,000 Nifty, we are about 45% in equity. Effectively, over the last 6 months, when markets were cheaper, we bought equity. When markets were expensive, we sold equity. And when markets are fairly valued, we are equal weight to equity. This combination helped us outperform the market. When this fund was launched in September 18, Nifty was 11,000. September 19, Nifty was 11,000. September 20, Nifty was about 11,000. Despite Nifty remaining at 11,000 or around for last 2 years, this fund has delivered 18% outperformance or 18% positive return. This is the power of allocation, buying when equity is cheap, selling when equity is expensive. So you can do this asset allocation to make money in equity market, or you can pick up companies which are cost conscious, digitally adaptive, and which have strong balance sheet, apart from good business model and good managers running them, to find out winners. At this point of time, our recommendation will be to be equal weight to equity. Markets are forward looking. It is priced in that economy will recover, medical crisis will come under control, India will be current account surplus, corporate earnings in FY21 will not be good, but FY22 there will be strong rebound. Foreign and local buyers will continue to buy equity. These are all reasonable assumptions, but they are priced in at this valuation. Markets will continue to rise if this assumptions comes correct. But from a valuation point of view, this is time to be equal weight to equity, unlike overweight, which was the case in March 2020. Equal weight doesn't mean that you sell your equity and go home. Equal weight means that you put as much money in equity on which you can afford to take the risk of volatility. Coming to fixed income side, okay, on equity, I just want to talk about one more point. SIPs, there was lots of talk. Many people were saying that SIP should be re-evaluated. They haven't delivered return. Now, if you look at Jan 20 numbers of Jan 20 data of SIP returns, most of our funds were delivering double-digit return. They were dream come true for any investor. March 20, same numbers became negative for up to 5-year SIP return. And 10-year SIP return came down by more than 50%. In 2 months, they become nightmare of any investor. You do SIP for 5 years and you don't get any return. You in fact lose on your capital. This is where a lot of people jumped about saying that SIP should be reconsidered. But when you calculate SIP return in a bear market, it is bound to give negative return. When you calculate SIP return in bull market, it is bound to give positive return. April SIP returns were better than March, but not good. May returns were better than April, but not good. June returns were better than May, but not good. This trend continued, and people who kept on doing SIP despite SIP returns being not so good, today are benefiting, as in the month of September, most of our equity funds SIP returns have moved into double digit or higher single digit. It's not that they have reached to Jan 20 level, but if market continues to deliver, certainly our SIP returns will again become dream come true for investors. So please continue your SIP unless until you have financial emergency. In fact, when your SIP returns are poor or negative, that is the time to top up SIP, put more money into SIP, because all SIP done at that level of market will deliver you maximum return. Coming to fixed income, clearly in the month of April, Franklin Templeton announced binding of 6 schemes that created another social media noise that you should take out money from fixed income funds. Now that noise pushed some investors to take decision by emotion rather than fact. They didn't listen to someone like Deepak at HDFC Securities to take a call based on portfolio. They just got misguided by what noise was coming on. And in the month of April, our credit risk fund delivered about 3% absolute negative return. This was there. The negative return came because I was a desperate seller of my paper to fund redemption. The entire market knew that we are coming to sell, and they checked up their prices at which they wanted to buy. Over next few days, things started coming under control. May, June, July, August, September. Over that 5-month period, our credit risk funds in absolute delivered 6% positive return. The entire loss of April was covered back. On top of it, you got the return which you were expecting. People who panicked ended up losing money. People who remained committed to investment ended up making money. In the fixed income space, it's extremely important that one takes a call based on portfolio rather than social media noise. At this point of time, we believe if you can have a 3-year horizon, if you are willing to take 1 or 2 corporate default, and corporate default does not mean that your money will go down the drain. It means that there will be temporary mark-to-market loss, and depending upon our security enforcement, we will be able to recover part or full money. On a 3-year basis, with corporate credit event occurring, we will still be able to deliver better return. If you look at last 3-year performance of most debt funds, bearing few exceptions, the conservative fund houses have delivered far better return than aggressive fund houses. At this point of time, we think conservatism will pay, and it is extremely important for an investor to take a 3-year view to invest in credit risk fund. Now, some investor can say that Nilesh bhai, I will take risk in my equity portfolio. On debt, I want safety. I don't want credit risk, which is a fair thing. For them, the choice of investment will be across dynamic bond fund, banking and PSU debt fund, corporate bond fund, and short-term bond fund. These are 4 products which are geared towards higher credit quality portfolios, and they try to generate return by taking call on duration. In current environment where policy rates are expected to soften to support growth, these funds are likely to outperform their respective alternatives. So in the fixed income space, listen to the experts, listen to advisor like HDFC Securities, and take a call based on portfolio rather than social media noise. An emotional decision is likely to incur losses. A rational decision is likely to survive the volatility and bring expected return. If you can take 3-year view and take some credit events, then credit risk fund is appropriate. If you don't want to take credit risk, then short-term bond fund, dynamic bond fund, corporate bond fund, or banking and PSU debt fund will be appropriate. Coming finally to the gold, generally gold does very well when interest rates are low and liquidity is high. Between November 2008 to September 11, gold prices moved from $750 to $1,900 in the wake of subprime crisis. Currently, we are seeing COVID-19 crisis. Interest rates are down to 0 in most parts of the world. Liquidity is higher than historical average across most parts of the world. There's a very good chance that this low interest rates and high liquidity regime continues for a few more years. Fed is already committed to keep high liquidity and lower interest rates till 2023. In this scenario, gold prices are likely to do well. In fact, they have moved up from $1,450 to about $1,950 in recent time after briefly touching $2,000. But we think this is just one phase of gold price movement. There is still more room to come. Over next 3 to 5 years, gold prices are likely to go higher in low interest rates and high liquidity environment. While investing in gold, you have physical gold option, you have gold ETF, and you have sovereign gold bonds. Any time horizon beyond 5 to 7 years, sovereign gold bond is most attractive as it pays coupon income to you at the rate of 2.25% to 2.5% every year. If you are buying gold ETF, you are taking a 1 year to 3 year time horizon, and compared to physical gold, gold ETF is better as there is no entry cost for buying gold. When you are buying gold in small denomination, many a times you pay 15 to 30% premium. In gold ETF, you buy it on secondary market, your premium will be hardly 0.5% to 1%. More importantly, in physical gold, liquidity could be an issue. It is dependent upon jeweler. In gold ETF, your liquidity is assured by the mutual fund. Gold also is an important asset class. It's a commodity, so it will keep on going up and down. But over a period of time, we think low interest rates and high liquidity will support gold prices. While investing in gold, just remember one thing. There is 12.5% import duty on gold in India. What you buy for $100 gold in Dubai, the same gold will cost 112.50 at same point of time in India, as gold prices are carrying import duty of 12.5%. If tomorrow import duty comes down to zero, the rupee gold prices will drop by 12.5% in one single day. From 50,000, they'll become 44,000. This is something which one needs to keep in mind. Subject to that, gold prices are attractive from an investment point of view, but keep in mind gold import duty. This is how we see the current market scenario across equity, fixed income, and gold. Happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Nilesh ji, for so lucidly and methodically explaining all the three asset classes and their risks and the upside potential in each of them. Now, typically, we have a lot of investors who feel that their returns on their portfolios do not match with the indices returns, especially because of the Nifty weightage. One reason is the Nifty weightage. And second reason is that divergent performances among stocks. So, and this divergence has increased over the last 1 or 2 years. So, in the earlier days, we used to have a situation where the entire stock market, all stocks used to rise and fall together. Maybe the degree used to be a little different, but now we are seeing even on a day when the indices are at a high, we are seeing 52-week low stocks also. So the divergence in terms of participation in the up move has sort of widened. So what is the advice to investors on those two things?
So undoubtedly, Deepak bhai, market has become polarized, and which is where it is extremely important to invest in businesses and companies looking at their future potential. Now we are at the stage in market where a company like Snowflex comes out with an IPO. Their turnover is $300 million and they have a market cap of $88 billion. When I looked at Snowflex financials, there is loss, EPS is negative. The only way to evaluate this business is market cap divided by gross sales, and it is trading at 75 times sales value. Now this is one set of extreme overvaluation, whereas on the other end there are manufacturing companies in infrastructure construction sector where they are going below book. The book value is 100, but they are trading at 50, 60, 70. Now this is how market is polarized. On one side, for incurring losses, you are getting billions of dollar value. On the other side, you are earning thousands of crore, but market is not willing to give same valuation. Now, this is the reality of our market, and which is where, apart from understanding fundamentals, which is profitability of the company, quality of earnings, it is also important to understand what will drive the P ratio of the company or valuation of the company. In some companies, unabated growth opportunity gives them higher valuation. In some companies, excellent consistency of earnings gives them their higher valuation. In some companies, they are generating tons of money, but because they are generating from sectors like tobacco and coal or defense equipments, market is not willing to give them value. So it's not only about finding quality of earnings, it is also about how market will perceive that earning and give valuation. And which is where we will continue to see this polarization, where some businesses will get valued at a higher value, some businesses, despite generating profit, will not get that valuation. And this is the work of professionals. What will move when? It's very difficult to say. You need to monitor this 24/7, 365 days a year. And that way you will be able to pick up trends which are resulting into better earnings and also better valuation. You will make money when earnings go up and valuation go up. You will lose money when earnings go down and valuation goes down. And there is then the other bracket where earnings goes up but valuation comes down, or earnings comes down but valuation goes up. In that case, you won't make much money, you won't lose much money. So as an investor, my focus should be to get into earnings and valuation momentum rather than other three quotients.
Right. But it is very difficult for the investors to have a perception of what the market will perceive, which sector in what way, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year down the line. So that is a very tough call for investors. I think it is a tough call even for some analysts and fund managers, if I'm not wrong.
100%. See, we are not God. We also go wrong horribly many a times. But at the end of the day, if mistakes committed by me is small loss, but steps taken by me gives me better profit, then overall I will be fine. What we are seeing is that any sector where growth is secular, no matter COVID-19 happens, no matter Indo-China war happens, no matter US presidential election happens, but this business continues to grow year after year, market will always value them high. The second thing is about your governance. Good governance companies will always get better valuation. Someone who has taken a shortcut and cheated their shareholders or their other obligations on environmental, social side, they are unlikely to get good valuation. The third thing is related to, apart from growth and governance, is consistency. In a very simpler way, Rahul Dravid was a far more consistent batsman, whereas Virendra Sehwag was far more volatile batsman. Consistency in stock market is always valued vis-a-vis volatility. So if you can find businesses which are growth oriented, which are consistent in their earnings, and where governance standards are better, 9 out of 10 you are likely to get a winner.
Sure. Nileshji, the other issues that some investors have is that a lot of mutual fund schemes have been underperforming vis-a-vis their benchmark indices. So what should they be doing? Should they be shifting away from there? How much time they should give to the schemes to sort of catch up on the returns and such like?
So Deepak bhai, there are multiple reasons why funds are underperforming benchmark index. One, the foremost is that I can't put more than 10% in reliance in my mutual fund schemes. But schemes which are tracking Nifty as a benchmark, they will underperform as Reliance weight is 5%. I am forgetting the dates, but between 7,500 to 10,500 odd journey of Nifty, 60% contribution was done by Reliance. So obviously someone who is stuck at 10% in Reliance versus someone who is at 15%, the 10% guy will underperform. Now the question is that at 15% weight in index, is Reliance a buy or a sell? If it's a buy, then the fund will still underperform index. But if it is not, then fund will automatically outperform index. The second thing is related to index calculation per se. In index, when Vedanta goes out, it is done at the closing price. But you and I both know that I have to sell Vedanta in market, there is an impact cost. Globally, when indexes are constructed, they take into account impact cost for inclusion as well as exclusion. In India, that doesn't happen. The third thing is related to cash. Index has zero cash, but I have to maintain cash for day-to-day redemptions. Now, cash will always underperform equity return except in bear market. So over the years, by providing this daily liquidity by maintaining cash has hurt my performance. So there are multiple such factors which impacts active funds performance vis-a-vis passive fund. And it is no surprise that even passive funds underperform benchmark index. Between Nifty and Sensex linked benchmark indices, where they don't have this 15% constraint, yet index funds have underperformed benchmark index by a percentage point. My feeling is that when small caps and mid caps starts outperforming large cap, majority of fund will be able to outperform their benchmark indices. Our alpha generation essentially happens by our stock selection outside of benchmark indices. When mid and small doesn't do well, all your call outside of indices hasn't delivered you return. But the day they start outperforming, automatically our alpha generation will come through.
Sure. Now coming to small and mid caps, again there we are seeing a narrower basket of stocks doing well, and a wide majority of small and mid caps falling out of favor forever, in a sense, because of governance issue, because of the disruption or whatever you call, or liquidity issues and such like. And a lot of investors are stuck with the out of favor small and mid cap stocks, and they are very reluctant to sort of part with them in the hope that in the small and mid cap rallies these stocks will also participate and they will get a chance to exit them. Do you agree with that kind of hope?
So Deepak bhai, in small and mid cap, what has happened is that in 2018 correction, a lot of people lost a lot of money. In 2017, small cap index had delivered almost 50% return, but 2018 correction, everything got wiped out. And even there, good quality small caps didn't fall as much, but the bad quality fell 80-90% also. There were certain PMS schemes which were invested into small and micro cap, and they also suffered heavily. My feeling is that unless until a small and mid cap company is very good from a governance point of view, there's no point in investing with them. Invariably, small cap companies has higher mortality rate, and if on top of it governance is poor, the chances of mortality increases multifold. So while investing in small and mid cap, you need to pick up right quality of management who will not cheat you. If you can pick up that segment of small cap companies, then it is worth investing. But right now we are seeing that some small caps, micro caps run at a higher level because they are very, very cheap. 2 rupee share becomes 4 rupee share. People think they have gained 100%. But this is not worth doing. It's better to stay in quality than to go in penny stocks.
Right. Nilesh, now this COVID situation, I know you are not a medical expert, but what is your feeling that when will it ultimately things come back to normal? As a fund, as an investment expert, do you have any kind of a view or outlook on COVID situation coming to an end at a particular time?
So the RBI is talking about March 2021 quarter showing positive GDP growth over previous year. September 20, December 20 quarter will still be negative GDP growth. March 21 will be positive GDP growth. If RBI's assumption is correct, we will see things getting normalized by March 21 and market might be discounting it 6 months early. So this is from a mathematical point of view. The second thing is from a qualitative point of view. Now our crisis started when medical crisis began. What is the solution for medical crisis? Either there is a combination of drug which will cure people, or there is vaccine which will prevent occurrence of this disease. Now today, seasonal flu, which also kills as many people as in COVID-19, people don't stop their working because they know that they can take seasonal flu shot and prevent themselves. And many people who don't take seasonal flu shots, they know that there is medicine available. Many of them will get treated at home. Some people will have to go to hospital, and there is a standard protocol available. Now, today we are seeing that fatality rate in India has started coming down dramatically as a standard protocol of drugs seems to be emerging. There is favipiravir set of medicine for a early stage COVID-19. There is remdesivir set of medicine for medium to late end, and then there is dexamethasone kind of steroids which are available for higher end. So somewhere between favipiravir, remdesivir, and dexamethasone, a standard protocol seems to be emerging. Obviously, ultimate solution is vaccine. Moderna is in phase 3 trial. AstraZeneca, after a small glitch, is in phase 3 trial. Pfizer BioNTech is in phase 3 trial. Russian vaccine has already come out, but now it is in phase 3 trial in Middle East. So out of this medicine, out of this vaccine, one of it will probably work out. This should be in market by Jan, and then obviously there is challenge of distribution. But one vaccine comes into play, ability of people to go back to normalcy is increased. So from a qualitative factor point of view, again, Jan to March 21 looks like a quarter where normalcy should return.
Sure. So that is probably some good news in this environment. Now, the people who are dependent on fixed income, like retirees, now they are facing a very peculiar situation in the falling interest rate regime. They don't have the risk appetite for equity exposure beyond, say, 10 or 20%. And so they are looking for some guidance as to what they should be doing to lock in. The first issue is whether interest rates will remain at these low levels for the next 2, 3, 4 years, or whether we will see an uptick. Because if we are going to see an uptick, then there is no point in locking the interest rates at this point of time. So that is the first issue. And second is, if the interest rates are going to be at these low levels for the next 2, 3, 4 years, then what is the strategy they should adopt? Now, debt funds is one option which is available to them. Should they also look at government schemes, post office schemes, or a combination of things, or how should they go about it?
So Deepak bhai, in our opinion, interest rates are going to go further down from current level. Policy rates, repo at 4% could go down to 3.5%. 10-year government securities, which is trading at 590, could go towards to 525 over a period of time. So lower interest rates in India are more likely to emerge rather than higher interest rates. Of course, this is dependent upon inflation, but if I have to put my money, I will put my money right now on lower interest rate. Now, in this scenario, retirees must build a portfolio of a credit interest-bearing portfolio across company fixed deposits. There are a couple of companies which are good credit worthy and they give better return than fixed deposits. So some company fixed deposits will be good. Then there are secondary market debentures which are available, again of good quality issuances, and they are available sometimes at a higher yield in secondary market. It is time to accumulate them. Then there are tier 2 bonds available of banking sector. I'm not talking about AT1 bonds, I'm talking about tier 2 bonds. They are less risky compared to AT1 bonds, and they offer 2 percentage point higher than bank deposits. You are undoubtedly taking a higher risk compared to bank deposits, but hopefully that risk will not materialize and your 2% extra return will be good carry. So between company fixed deposits, between debentures which are available in secondary market, and between tier 2 bonds of public sector banks, you can create a portfolio of fixed income which will deliver you regular interest income or a certain fixed income. The second portion will be invested into debt funds, dynamic bond funds, banking and PSU debt fund, short-term bond fund, or credit risk fund if your 3-year horizon is there and you can take 1 or 2 credit events. This combination will not deliver you consistent return like FD or debenture, but they will deliver you over a period of time with some amount of volatility, reasonably good return. Between this 60-70%, your requirement of regular income will be taken care. The other percentage you need to invest in equities. You can choose balance advantage fund, which does allocation and reduces your volatility. You can choose asset allocation fund, where fund manager takes a call how much to invest in equity and so on and so forth. You can look at monthly income plan, which are now called hybrid debt hybrid funds, or you can look at equity savings schemes, which are again marginal equity exposure and fairly conservative equity exposure. So if I have to divide, let's say for an average retiree, 25 to 30% across company fixed deposits, debentures, and tier 2 bonds, 25 to 30% across short-term bond fund, credit risk fund, dynamic bond fund, and 30 to 40% across monthly income. I mean, now they are called debt hybrid schemes or equity saving schemes or balance advantage schemes. Combination of this will give you some equity exposure and also a reasonably good regular income. Now, one should not invest in dividend plan in mutual fund at this point of time. Systematic withdrawal plan will improve your post-tax return significantly. So go for SWP rather than dividend plan.
Sure. That was some very great advice, I suppose, for people who are looking at getting a low risk kind of a portfolio. Now, the next question is about multi-cap funds. What should one do if one is holding multi-cap funds? Will there be a turmoil in those schemes because of the SEBI regulation to take the small cap exposure higher?
Absolutely. People who have invested in multi-cap funds should go to sleep without worrying about anything. SEBI chairman in MFI annual general meeting told unequivocally that we don't want mutual funds to buy stock at any prices. That's not our intention. We are actively considering MFI's submission on multi-cap fund, and we will take appropriate action. No regulator in any part of the world would push mutual funds to buy small and mid-cap stocks at any prices. They are not here to pull small and mid-cap stocks. They are here to protect investors. As MFI, we have told SEBI that allow us to launch a flexi-cap category where fund managers can go from 100% large cap to 100% small cap. If flexi-cap category comes through as we expect, then our multi-cap fund, Kotak Standard multi-cap fund, will straightway become Kotak Standard flexi-cap fund. Its investment process will remain the same. There won't be a single naya paisa change in the portfolio. We'll continue to manage standard flexi-cap fund like we were managing standard multi-cap fund.
So there's nothing to worry at this point.
There's absolutely nothing to worry.
There's one question about banks. Now, banks currently in a low interest regime, and when NPLs are non-performing assets are growing, of course, private banks have less of that problem. The whole private sector and the PSU have a larger problem on that front. But going forward, even for private sector banks, do you think because of the low interest regime, the NIMs will start shrinking? And NPAs, which private sector was able to avoid so far, will they also get hit by them to some extent? And the premium valuations that private banks are enjoying, will they shrink? Will it shrink going forward?
Undoubtedly, in the lower interest rate regime, NIMs do come under pressure, and banks will have to make money on fee-based activity rather than margin. Some banks will be able to do this transition, some may not be able to do. But imagine in Western world where interest rates are zero, how are they making money? They're still making money in billions of dollars by doing fee-based activity like mutual fund selling, insurance selling, stock broking, wealth management, trade financing, and so on and so forth. So good banks will still be able to maintain profitability by focusing on fee-based income compared to fund-based income. Again, similarly, when COVID-19 disruption hits, there will be higher credit cost. As people lose job, as businesses suffer, there will be consequences for the banks. But if you have done secured lending, hit to you will be much lower. If you are able to capture opportunities where RBI was providing funding and you were able to put that into economy by investing, your margins will expand. If you played interest rate game properly, your treasury profits this year could be phenomenal as interest rates have come down dramatically over 1 year period. So there will be multiple levers available for a good bank to maintain profitability growth from fee-based income, from leveraging their investments in treasury. This, and apart from that, a good credit culture will ensure that they will be differentiated vis-a-vis rest of the banking sector.
Sure. One question is about, are you a fan of passive investing at all? Do you recommend investment in index funds or you don't recommend?
Undoubtedly, people should invest in index fund, but please remember that today majority of index fund itself are underperforming benchmark indices because of variety of reasons which I mentioned about. One should invest in index fund if the active fund managers are not able to generate alpha. Today, if we see across our small and mid cap funds, all our funds are generating alpha. In large and mid cap space, we are able to generate alpha. Multi cap space, large cap space, alpha generation has come down a little bit, but that can easily be explained by Reliance. So there are still fund houses which are able to generate alpha by managing performance, and those equity schemes one should invest. When you meet with fund houses whose schemes are underperforming benchmark indices, then one should go towards index fund.
Sure. I think we are done with most of the questions. Do you have anything, any parting or concluding remarks?
Just one advice, Deepak bhai. Today there is a lot of social media noise which kind of deviates people from their basic discipline. If you remember, in the month of March at 7,500 Nifty, there was lots of messages as if the world is going to come to an end. There were problems on medical side that COVID-19 will erode so many people. There will be so many crores of death in India and so on and so forth. When that was behind us, in the month of April, people talked about Events and Templeton, extrapolated to other funds, and started advising people to redeem from debt funds, even though debt funds and credit risk funds are totally different. When we moved into May, SIP became an issue. People pointed out negative returns of SIP in March and April and started spreading rumors that you must stop SIP, you must reevaluate your SIP. It went further up. In the month of August, we had multi-cap circular. Again, people started jumping, saying that now this fund houses will sell this large cap stocks, they will buy the small and mid cap stocks. The small and mid cap rallied, and people started redeeming from multi-cap fund under the fear that, oh, if they will have to go and buy small and mid cap funds, my risk will increase. Now, if you see over last 6 months, all this social media noise, all this WhatsApp forwarding has costed investors. By listening to doomsayers about COVID-19, they lost out investing in March. By listening to people who talk negative about SIP, they lost out on the recovery which happened in July, August, September. By listening to doomsayers on credit risk fund, they ended up redeeming and suffered losses. In multi-cap fund, the same thing happened. So my only request to people, to listeners, is that please don't go by social media noise. That guy has no obligation to you. He's making ridiculous claims to get your attention. He's only striving for your attention, and that's why he's making, weird claims. He's twisting data to prove his point. At this point of time, you need to be disciplined, and you must talk to your relationship manager at HDFC Securities to understand whatever comment you have received, whatever feedback you have received, what is truth and what is fact. If you will go by data, if you will go by logic, if you will go by rationality, I can assure you that your portfolio will do far better compared to when you go by the social media noise and WhatsApp forwarding.
Good. So basically, knee-jerk reactions does not help anybody. One has to take a very calculated decision after considering various things rather than just on the social media write-ups. So thank you very much, Nilesh Bhai. It was a pleasure listening to you methodically and logically talking about macros, sectors, mutual funds, etc., and even stocks selection strategies. A lot of the participants would have benefited out of it. I'm sure about that. Participants, I hope you have enjoyed this. You have got some value add out of this, and we will be back with some more episodes of Guru Gyan going forward. Thank you, Nilesh Bhai, once again.
Thank you.